Hey everybody, this is Anime Octopus, and today we're diving into a fascinating topic: what if Naruko's eyes were sealed? Disclaimer: the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright everyone, let's get focused. Narrator's perspective. Please, just leave me alone. A young girl cried out, frantically scrambling to her feet as she fled from a group of villagers who took pleasure in tormenting the demon child. She ran as fast as her small 6-year-old legs could carry her. In her panic, she failed to realize that she had taken a wrong turn, finding herself at a dead end in a dimly lit alleyway deep within Konoha's slums. She was far from the Hokage Tower, with no way of alerting the Hokage for help. One of the villagers stepped toward her, and before she could react, a brutal kick landed on her stomach, sending her crashing against the cold alley wall. Her small hands clutched her head as she shut her eyes tightly, sliding down to the damp ground, where puddles formed from the rain. Tears streamed down her face as the villagers began to close in, their hateful gazes weighing heavily on her trembling frame. Please. She hiccuped through sobs, fear gripping her entire body. The lead villager, the one who had organized this cruel assault, stepped forward with a smirk curling his lips. He crouched down to meet her eye level, finding her desperate attempts to disappear into the wall amusing. Why are you crying? You're supposed to be a demon. Demons don't cry, he mocked, grabbing her chin and forcing her to meet his gaze. The young girl's wide, glossy blue eyes caught the glint of the Konoha headband tied tightly around his forehead, illuminated by the faint moonlight. He's a ninja, she thought, dread consuming her as she realized the extent of harm a ninja could inflict, far worse than any ordinary villager. Releasing her, he retreated to the far end of the alley, leaning casually against the wall with his arms folded over his chest. Let's finish this, he said coldly, nodding to the others. The villagers grinned and moved toward her, their hands gripping various makeshift weapons that promised nothing but pain. What followed were the anguished screams of a young girl, her cries echoing through the slums of Konoha. The sound carried, but no one came to her aid. After all, she was just the demon child. Hours passed. The ninja who had taken part in the assault remained in the same position, watching with a detached expression as the villagers began to disperse, satisfied with their cruel handiwork. As dawn approached, the sky slowly lightened from its blackened clouds to a faint violet hue. Blood was splattered across the alley floor, and the young girl lay motionless, her shallow breath strained as blood dripped from her many wounds. The ninja finally moved, walking over to the battered child and picking her up in a careless bridal carry. Her body tensed in pain, and she grunted and hissed from the agony of being moved, but he paid her no mind. Without hesitation, he disappeared, reappearing atop Hokage Mountain. Roughly, he dropped her to the ground, causing her to cough violently as blood trickled from the corners of her mouth. She whimpered, tears filling her eyes as the pain consumed her, every part of her body ablaze with suffering. That was interesting, the ninja remarked indifferently as he watched the girl struggle to lift herself to her knees, her body barely holding together. Naru squinted at the approaching figure, barely making him out in the dimly lit alley. The newfound light allowed her to see more clearly. His dark hair, tied into a low ponytail, fluttered lightly in the breeze, and his Anbu uniform stood out against the shadows. His complexion was unusually pale, and his eyes glowed with the activated Sharingan, replacing the usual onyx hue with red irises marked by 3 tomoe, spinning ominously. You have such striking eyes, he remarked, suddenly appearing in front of her, causing her to gasp in surprise. It would be a shame if you lost them, he continued, pressing her down with overwhelming force. Naru, weakened and injured, felt her body struggle in vain against him. Pain surged through her as she tried to resist, but her strength quickly waned under the mounting exhaustion. Her tense muscles slowly gave way, and she could no longer fight back. That's it. Just rest, the ninja said, brushing her blood-stained blonde bangs from her face, though they quickly fell back into place. Uzumaki Naru. Such a remarkable name. Naru pressed her wounded hands, now bleeding profusely, against the ninja's chest in an effort to create some distance, but her attempt was in vain. The man was far stronger than she was. "Those innocent eyes of yours. They infuriate me," he shouted, his rage evident as he glared into her frightened blue eyes, which trembled with fear. "Perhaps it's time we got rid of them," he sneered, drawing a kunai from his pouch. The weapon was wrapped in a tattered dark brown cloth, and as he unraveled it, dark purple liquid dripped ominously from the blade. "Even with your healing abilities, you won't recover from this. It may not kill you, but it will leave you with quite the lasting consequence." He positioned the kunai above her eyes, preparing to strike. Tears welled in Naru's eyes as she saw the blade inch closer, but just before it could descend, the sudden cry of a young boy pierced the air, halting the attack. She focused on the boy, his small figure outlined by the rising sun, the morning's hues casting an almost angelic glow around him. "Itachi!" the boy shouted, drawing the ninja's attention. Itachi sat atop Naru, holding her by the throat with a vice-like grip. "Ah, Sasuke! Come to witness my vengeance for our mother, Uchiha Mikoto," Itachi said, a twisted grin spreading across his face. A lump formed in Naru's throat as she silently prayed that this boy had come to save her. "No, Itachi, this is wrong!" Sasuke yelled, his small fists clenched tightly. Straightening his back, he met his brother's gaze head-on. "I've already alerted Hokage-sama. They will be here soon." "Curse you, Sasuke!" Itachi hissed, his expression darkening. Glancing back down at Naru, he smirked. "Very well. I'll leave you with a parting gift. I will avenge those Uchiha who fell at your hands that fateful day." With that, he drove the poison-laced kunai into Naru's left eye. A blood-curdling scream tore from her throat as she struggled to escape his grasp. Desperately, she turned her gaze toward Sasuke, who seemed almost ethereal, his face bathed in the golden light of dawn. But before she could react further, Itachi stabbed the kunai into her right eye. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the first person who had ever tried to save her, her savior, before the darkness consumed her, accompanied by one final, agonizing scream. Karasu's POV. I watched over Naru as she lay in bed, her occasional whimpers betraying the nightmares that plagued her. As a member of the Anbu, I had been assigned by the Hokage himself to act as the caretaker of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, the young girl he cared for deeply. I remember the shock I felt when I first saw her. Her once brilliant blue eyes had turned cloudy, devoid of the light they once held. Her skin was pale, as if she had been deprived of sunlight for too long, and her lips were forever etched with a sorrowful frown. The Hokage had told me that she once dreamed of becoming the greatest Hokage the world had ever seen, but those dreams had been crushed when she was forbidden from entering the academy due to her blindness. She was like a broken doll, her ambitions stripped from her. After witnessing her condition, I accepted the responsibility of being her personal caretaker. For the past 2 years, I have watched over her without fail, ensuring she was never left alone. On the rare occasions when I was sent on missions, I entrusted her care to my former sensei, Kakashi. After a few months of her getting used to my presence, I helped her see that being blind wasn't such a burden, though she still needed a lot of care. She became more accepting of her situation over time. I managed to encourage her to eat all of her meals and enjoy time outdoors. Every day, I took her for a walk around the village so she could get some fresh air. We soon discovered that Naru had a remarkable talent as a Boreindo Adasudo, blind artist. Even though she couldn't see, she was able to draw and paint with the skill of a true master. I was pulled from my thoughts when I heard a sharp gasp. I turned to see her sitting up in bed, breathing heavily with sweat beading on her forehead. Slowly, I walked to her bedside and sat next to her, gently resting my hands on her trembling fists. She looked up at me, tears glistening in her clouded eyes. I pulled her into a comforting embrace as her hands clutched my shirt, her tears soaking into my chest. I placed my hands on her back, softly rubbing soothing circles to calm her down. "Shh, Naru, it's okay. It was just a dream. Everything is fine now." She grew quiet but still held on to me. Even though I had broken through her cold exterior and made her smile again, I could never stop the nightmares that haunted her. How I wish I could. I felt her slowly pull away and looked down at her. Her short blonde hair, shoulder-length and tousled, stuck out messily from her restless night of sleep. "Good morning, Karasu, Raven." We carried on as if nothing had happened. It was that simple. "We're going out today, Naru," I informed her. She instantly brightened at the news. "Yay! I haven't been outside in so long," she exclaimed, bouncing up and down on her bed with excitement. Naru often displayed the energy of a child, even though she was supposed to be a mature teenager. I supposed it was because much of her childhood had been overshadowed by her struggles with blindness and the mental trauma she had endured. "Well, you need to take a bath first," I added. She pouted, crossing her arms in a playful display of reluctance, but nodded in agreement. "Now, let's see if you can find the bathroom on your own, okay?" Determined, she stood up and gave a nod before placing her hands on the wall. This was one of the many exercises we practiced every morning to help her grow more independent when I wasn't around. Though progress was slow, she was steadily improving. Over the 2 years we had known each other, Naru still had difficulty navigating on her own, but she was getting better. I occasionally had to guide her, but she was learning. I stood beside her as she carefully made her way across the room, both hands tracing the wall for guidance. Her steps were slow and deliberate, full of focus as she worked to find her own way to the bathroom. Naru eventually reached her bedroom door, slowly opening it. She moved down the short hallway, concentrating intensely on her surroundings and relying on her other senses to guide her. I couldn't help but smile beneath my mask as she neared the correct door. She was making excellent progress, even if it was slow and steady. Once we were both in the bathroom, I prepared her bath, ensuring the water was the right temperature. With the bath ready, I moved to stand near the door, giving her the privacy she needed. Naru approached the bath and began to change out of her clothes, consisting of a dark blue shirt and orange shorts. After undressing, she carefully stepped into the tub, pulling the curtain closed once she found it. This routine had become second nature to us, though it had been awkward at first. Initially, I had to help her with simple tasks like undressing and dressing, but over time, Naru had grown confident in doing these things by herself. Now, my main responsibility was picking out her clothes since her color choices didn't always match. "Hey, Karasu?" I heard her call from behind the curtain. "What is it?" I replied. "Why can't you ever tell me your real name?" I sighed, feeling the weight of the question. "Naru, we've talked about this before. It's part of the Anbu rules. My identity has to remain a secret." "But I wouldn't tell anyone," she said softly. "Naru," I cautioned, hoping she would relent and abandon the topic. The sound of Naru submerging her head beneath the water, followed by her dismissive mumble of whatever, allowed me to exhale in relief and stifle a chuckle at her youthful stubbornness. After completing her bath, Naru made her way back to her room, where Karasu had laid out her clothes on the bed. She glided her hand across the fabric to identify her garments. Upon locating the pile, she selected her black shinobi pants, which extended just above her knees, and carefully pulled them over her orange underwear. Next, Naru reached for her bra, gently fastening it in place. She felt a sense of accomplishment in her ability to dress independently, taking pride in her progress. Although she had initially found it somewhat embarrassing for Karasu to assist her, she appreciated her newfound autonomy. A faint blush colored her scarred cheeks at the mere thought of the man she loved helping her dress and witnessing her bare form. Naru then reached down to her bed, pulling a black tank top over her head, which stopped just beneath her bust. Over that, she donned a loose orange shirt that fell just below her hips, the fabric hanging casually and revealing the strap of her black tank top on her right shoulder. At that moment, Karasu entered the room and regarded Naru with admiration for dressing herself once again. He smiled at her, though Naru was unaware of his expression due to her blindness and the raven-colored Anbu mask obscuring his face. Karasu guided her to the dressing table chair, prompting her to sit. He retrieved a brush from the desk and began to work through the knots and tangles in Naru's hair, arranging her bangs to frame her face delicately, resembling the iconic style of female Naruto. Once her hair was neatly styled, Karasu and Naru ventured into the kitchen to prepare a nutritious breakfast, much to Naru's chagrin. After they enjoyed the most important meal of the day, Karasu took Naru's hand and placed it around his arm to guide her through the village. Once he secured the door to her apartment, he slipped his hands into his pockets, still feeling her arm encircling his own. As they walked through the village, Naru sensed the scrutinizing glares directed at her and caught snippets of harsh whispers, her acute hearing amplifying their disdain. "Be strong, Naru, don't let them affect you," she urged herself mentally, summoning her signature, radiant grin. Karasu and Naru strolled through the village, relishing their time together. After enjoying a bowl of ramen for lunch, they took a leisurely walk to a lake near the Uchiha compound. They sat in serene silence, basking in the warmth of the sun, while a gentle breeze occasionally swept by, offering them a refreshing reprieve. Karasu glanced at Naru, noting her evident fatigue. Her body remained frail due to the prolonged physical abuse and malnutrition she had endured throughout her life. Despite his efforts to ensure she received daily exercise and a balanced diet, it would still take time for her body to fully recuperate. At this hour, Naru often found herself exhausted from the energy exertion Karasu demanded of her. He gently rested her head on his lap, a gesture she accepted without protest. Naru cherished these moments. Her mornings were spent exploring the village, followed by lunch, and then Karasu would bring her to the river, where she often succumbed to a peaceful afternoon slumber. After an hour of quiet, punctuated only by Naru's soft breathing and the soothing sounds of the flowing river, Karasu felt an overwhelming sense of tranquility. He had to admit he had developed a fondness for the blonde girl, perhaps even feelings that transcended friendship. Looking down at Naru, a smile graced his lips at the sight of her serene face resting comfortably in his lap. He tenderly caressed her scarred cheek, tracing his fingers over her whisker-like markings. Suddenly, he sensed an approaching presence behind him and turned his head slowly to see a pink-haired girl standing a few feet away. Once she was close enough, she bent down on her knees, panting heavily. "Sasuke," she began, but Karasu interrupted by placing a finger gently on his lips, still concealed by his Anbu mask. Sakura straightened and stepped closer to him, tilting her head to peek over his shoulder. Her face lit up as she spotted the blonde Jinchuriki peacefully asleep on Karasu's lap. The entire Rookie 9, along with their sensei, were aware of his mission to care for the blind Jinchuriki and admired his commitment to spending time with a girl who had faced such adversity at a young age. They were impressed by how much progress Karasu had made in helping her regain her strength over the past 2 years. Leaning closer to Karasu, Sakura whispered, "Tsunade-sama and the third wish to see you immediately and have asked that you bring Naru along." She spoke softly, careful not to rouse the sleeping girl. Karasu nodded in understanding as he watched Sakura sprint off toward the hospital, aware of her responsibilities there. Gently, he roused Naru from her slumber and informed her of their summons to Tsunade-sama and the third Hokage. Although reluctant to leave the comfort of sleep, Naru agreed to accompany Karasu to the Hokage Tower. Upon their arrival, Naru greeted her beloved Ba-chan and the elderly Hokage with an enthusiastic bear hug. In contrast, Karasu knelt respectfully before them, bowing his head, an important lesson in manners he was eager to impart to Naru. "Karasu, please rise," Tsunade instructed. Naru returned to his side, wrapping her arm around his. The third Hokage smiled at the endearing scene. He had to admit the two made a charming pair. "It has come to our attention that it may become increasingly difficult for you to protect Naru due to your missions," the third stated gravely. "Thus, we have decided that Naru will accompany you on your lower-ranked missions. This arrangement will allow you to safeguard her while also providing her with opportunities to venture outside the village." Tsunade added with a hint of a smile, "And Karasu, you will remove your mask and reveal your true identity to Naru." Karasu nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Naru's eyes widened with curiosity, eager to finally learn the name of the person who had rescued her from despair and guided her back into the light. Slowly, he released her grip on his arm and lifted the porcelain raven-shaped mask from his face. He looked down at Naru, who gazed up at him with her blank eyes, a sign of her blindness. "Naru," he began gently, "my name is Uchiha Sasuke. I am 16, 1 year older than you. I am part of Team 7, which includes our sensei, Hatake Kakashi, Sai, and Haruno Sakura. I am the only Anbu member on my team." Naru felt her heart race as the realization dawned on her. That name. Your brother. A lump formed in her throat, recognizing him as the same individual who had attempted to save her years ago. "That was you?" "Yes," Sasuke replied, his voice heavy with regret. "I learned of my older brother Itachi's plans against you and needed to intervene, but I was too late. By the time I found you, it was already too late." He faltered, the weight of his words pressing down on him. He worried that the girl he cared for might harbor anger towards him for his failure and the deception he had maintained for 2 years. But what he did not anticipate was being enveloped in a heartfelt embrace from the blind girl, her warmth enveloping him. "You're not angry?" She smiled with a warmth and pure joy that made his heart swell. "How can I harbor resentment towards the person who endeavored to save me all those years ago, even though the demon within me took your mother away? How can I be upset with the individual who guided me from darkness into light, revealing that there was still so much more to life, despite my blindness? How can I be angry at my savior?" Sasuke's eyes widened at her heartfelt words before he accepted her embrace, murmuring his gratitude. For the two Hokages, it was a moment to cherish, filled with the profound significance of the sentiments expressed and the gratitude that resonated within them. Once they were back on their feet, Naru wrapped her arms around Sasuke's, a radiant smile illuminating her face. A moment later, a series of knocks echoed through the room. "Enter," Tsunade commanded. In walked Hatake Kakashi, Sai, and Haruno Sakura, each bowing their heads in respect to the two Hokages before them. "You summoned us, Hokage-sama?" Kakashi inquired, relaxing his posture. "Indeed, I have called you all here for a mission." Kakashi glanced down to see his sensei's daughter clasping the arm of the Uchiha boy, who was devoid of his mask. "Ah, so you finally decided to reveal the truth to her, Sasuke," Kakashi remarked, his one visible eye forming a playful crescent shape. Sasuke snorted, averting his gaze from the older man. "Kakashi-ni-san," the blonde exclaimed, recognizing his voice. "Hello, Naru. It's a pleasure to see you again," he said, playfully ruffling her hair. Following the introductions between Naru and Sasuke's team, the Hokage outlined the mission details. They were tasked with protecting a young princess and accompanying her back to the Rain Village. They would depart at 6 a.m. the following morning, where they would meet the princess and her personal guards. "Since Naru will be accompanying you on this mission, I expect her to receive your full protection and attention. Do you all understand?" Tsunade asserted, her tone firm. They nodded in agreement. Naru bounced with excitement, thrilled not only at the prospect of her first mission but also at having made 2 new friends. Once they left the Hokage Tower, they decided to introduce Naru to the rest of the Rookie 9, now that Sasuke no longer needed to conceal his identity from her. Unbeknownst to them, they were being watched by a figure concealed among the trees, a sinister grin plastered across his face, with 3 subordinates shadowing him. The leader adjusted his glasses, his cloak's hood draping around his shoulders, and his gray hair blowing in the breeze. "Orochimaru-sama will be pleased to learn that the Uchiha boy and the Kyuubi girl will be passing through the sound. He will be even more delighted to hear that the Kyuubi girl possesses a very rare and special gift." With that, they vanished without a trace, leaving no indication of their presence. Thank you all for your attention. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. I appreciate your support. Best regards. Anime Octopus.